Have you ever felt that you've got time on your hands and maybe you'd like to do a little bit of art but you don't really know where to start? That's how I was. So I started doing some art 2 years ago and I'm slowly getting better, and in this video I'm sharing my journey with you about how I'm working with coloured inks now as a hobby artist. Join me. My name is Alison and we're going to be doing this very interesting weird looking gourd. I'm going to be showing you how I painted that, and I'll be working here in my artist studio, which is just one side of my living room. Let's get started. Okay, so gourds come in many shapes and forms. They're generally like pumpkins, butternuts and so on, but some of the vegetables really end up being very weird, and this is one of the weird gourds that I picked up at the grocery store. I don't know what the name of it is, and maybe one of you can let me know in the comments. So anyway, I decided to use this one because it looks kind of all twisted and it looks like a duck in a way, so I wanted to draw that. So in my perpetual nature journal, I'm on the October page and I'm going to do a pencil sketch now of this gourd and just lay it out there in the corner. I'm using a 2H pencil, which is really my favorite pencil for sketching because it's hard enough that you do just get a light line, which is really what I want. I'm not engraving, I'm not using a very dark pencil here at all. So I just start doing some outlines and the main veins on the gourd. Next I'm reaching for my Winsor & Newton coloured inks. This is the canary yellow. I like to start with the lightest colours first. I like to shake the bottle and then just put some out in my little palette there on the right. I've got a couple of thin paintbrushes, a 2 and a 4 I believe it is, and I'm just bringing some of the ink from the bottle and putting it in the palette. From here I will actually water it down and thin it down to give myself a very light wash when I start laying this yellow onto the page. So I'm really much a very beginner ink artist, and I have done probably 10 or 12 drawings by now, and this is me sharing my journey with you. What I'm doing here is very lightly going in. I'm with the dry on, with the wet on dry method, and just painting very lightly where those veins are in the gourd, trying to get those very, very light yellows down on the page. At this point I realise I've got quite a puddle of ink there, so I use a little bit of kitchen paper and just dip the corner onto the page, and it just sucks up some of that excess moisture because I don't want it too wet. I find when I work with super wet either watercolors or ink work, the color gets away from me, and I really don't like that. I am a much more, I think, control painter in that way. My next color up from the light to the dark, now it's a color called orange, conveniently, and it's orange, so I've just got that in my next little palette well, and I'll be putting it in only in certain points on the gourd. You have to see that there are only some main, like in some of the valleys there's that orange, and that's where I'm painting that orange in. Again, I'm thinning it slightly because the ink is very strong if you take it straight from the bottle. I've also learned that you really need to put the lids on these ink pots when you've finished with it. The next color I'm using here is the green, and it's again going to be in the pot, but this is a green that is quite a blue green. So I do soften it down with some of the yellow to make it more of an olive green, so it's much more believable for plant work. The colours that come straight out of the pot are very often too bright, and it makes if you use those inks straight off, it just makes the painting look a little bit unbelievable. So soften your colours, and you can always build them up again later. So I was quite happy using a very fine brush for this. I'm just laying the ink between the pencil marks and making it just slowly coming up to the colour, because the gourd itself has got some really quite dark greens, so I can't put that down in one go. I like to build it up with layers, let it dry and come back again with more colour, and I just find that's an easy way to do it. Now many of you may, if you're ink painters, you will know other ways of doing this, other tips and tricks, and I'm sure there are many videos on YouTube that can help you with that. The next ink colour I'm pulling out is called Nut Brown, and this is quite a, I want to call it's a puce colour, and it's the colour I'm using to darken things on a subtle way without using black. I never use black. So the idea is that you're just going to soften down the greens and it darkens some of your colours while still giving them a richness of colour. So it's on the red side and it tends to darken that green. So that's why I used it. I find it's a great colour, this nut brown in the Winsor & Newton. It's a great colour to work with to add darker shades without going for black or Payne's grey. So I really like the nut brown. I'm just going back now, just adding a little bit more definition to the really, really dark parts on the gourd. Lightly, just generally adding some more detail to the high points on the gourd and the base and the knobby bit at the top. So I had a bit of bleed coming out there, so I've got my white jelly roll pen and I'm just whitening the page where the ink bled out because it just looked a little odd. Next I'm using my black fine liner pen to add to go over the pencil lines to add definition to this painting. You could do the ink pen first. I actually prefer to do it afterwards, having done the pencil sketch, then the ink, then I'm happy to put the pen on. Then I decided I was going to do an inside view of this gourd, so now I'm in my kitchen. I'm going to try and cut this thing right down the middle so I can then draw and paint the inside. And it took a bit of doing. I've got my regular kitchen knife out here, but this was such a tough vegetable. I could not believe it. And the whole thing's wobbling, and I'm thinking, gosh, fingers here. So I had quite a bit of a go with my main kitchen knife. I then eventually had to get out my massive cleaver, which is quite heavy, and it's a very sharp stainless steel and quite a wieldy weapon. And I tried to cut this vegetable. Now, honestly, I'm not much of a cook, but anyway, I could hardly get through. It took quite a bit of doing, but eventually I got the thing cut open in half. So now I'm able to do a drawing and painting of the inside of this gourd. So to work on my composition, because I had the outside of the gourd almost pointing right, I decided to use the inside of the gourd that's pointing left with the neck. And I'm just drawing it slightly behind the front one. It only occurred to me afterwards to draw the inside. I was really just going to pay attention to the outside, but I was quite kind of interested. So again, what I'm doing is, now that the first bit is totally dry, I'm going back in with my 2H pencil. I'm doing a quick sketch as I did before, and then I'm going to start using the inks again to paint the inside of this gourd. And by this time, I'd actually washed my palette, so I was starting again with the inks. And yeah, just thinning it down once more, going first for the yellow, then for the orange, and then the green, and then coming back again with the nut brown. So yeah, it took a while. I would say the first painting took me probably about an hour to sketch it out and paint it and let it dry, and then this second piece as well was slightly quicker because I was a little bit more organized, and probably about half an hour to put this painting down there in my perpetual nature journal. I love working in this perpetual nature journal because it's an ongoing living book, and each month of the year has its own couple of pages, and I go in and paint something from nature. I only started this book this May, so there's just a few items in here, and you can see at the moment there's the wheat on the right hand side, but so I'm starting to work with it, and I like the idea of the perpetualness of it, that it's not just going to be a sketchbook that gets filled up and done and put on a shelf. It's going to be an ongoing sketchbook for nature work where I can each month draw something new or whatever's happening in nature, or landscapes or leaves or vegetables and so on, and add something to it, because I'm putting the date by meaning the year that I did the little drawing here. So this gourd will be 2022, and then next October in 2023 I'll come back and be drawing something else altogether, and slowly these pages will fill up. So the perpetual nature journal is not one that is work from the front to the back. You go in on the month, whatever month you're in, and you put your drawing or your sketch or your flower pressed petals or your sheaf of wheat, and you just stick it in. It's a great book to continue to grow and build on. So now that the drawing is finished, you can have a little bit of a close-up. I'm really quite happy how this came out. I am still exploring very much with inks, but I'm loving the way they're working. I seem to be mastering that I have to use a smaller paintbrush, and this is just a technique that works for me. If you use inks, let me know. So do you enjoy the fall weird looking vegetables? Yeah, I kind of do. It's interesting. I'm Alison. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.